السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسعدني أن أرحب بمعالي الأستاذ براين المبعوث الخاص للرئيس الأمريكي فيما يتعلق بالشأن الإيراني، والذي يقوم بزيارة للمنطقة للتشاور والتنسيق فيما يتعلق بأمور مختلفة. أمس تم عقد عشاء عمل بين معاليه وبين صاحب السمو الملكي نائب وزير الدفاع. اليوم معاليه قابل سمو وزير الخارجية وقابل معالي مستشار الأمن الوطني وعضو مجلس الوزراء، كما قابل معالي وزير الاستثمار في المملكة. وكانت المواضيع تتعلق بأمور المنطقة، العمليات الإجرامية التي تقوم بها إيران وأهمية التصدي لها. بحثنا مواضيع تتعلق باليمن، تتعلق بسوريا، بالعراق، بس أهم شيء كان يتعلق بكيفية تكثيف وتعزيز العلاقات التاريخية والاستراتيجية بين المملكة العربية السعودية والولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. الآن نبحث موضوع الصواريخ الإيرانية والأعمال الإجرامية التي تقوم بها الجمهورية الإسلامية الإيرانية. منذ بداية الحرب في اليمن كان فيه 1659 هجوم على مدنيين في المملكة العربية السعودية. تم إطلاق 318 صاروخ باليستي إيرانية الصنع وإيرانية المنشأ من قبل ميليشيات الحوثي على مدن وقرى المملكة العربية السعودية. تم إطلاق 371 طيارة مسيرة على المملكة من قبل الحوثيين. تم إطلاق سفن مسيرة مفخخة عددها 64 سفينة لعرقلة حرية الملاحة في منطقة باب المندب والبحر الأحمر. منذ عام 1979 منذ الثورة الإيرانية قامت إيران باغتيال أكثر من 360 شخص في جميع أنحاء العالم. إيران تتعامل مع عصابات تروج للمخدرات ومع عصابات إجرامية في جميع أنحاء العالم، ولذلك الأمم المتحدة والعالم صنفت إيران كدولة داعمة للإرهاب، وتعتبر إيران هي الدولة الأولى التي تدعم الإرهاب في جميع أنحاء العالم. ورانا تشاهدون نبذة قليلة من الصواريخ والطائرات المسيرة والأسلحة التي تقدمها إيران لمنظمات إرهابية مثل حزب الله ومثل منظمة الحوثي، والتي تستهدف ضد المدنيين في المملكة العربية السعودية وأماكن أخرى في العالم. نعمل مع الولايات المتحدة لمنع إيران من تصدير الأسلحة، ونحث المجتمع الدولي على أن يتم تمديد الحظر على بيع الأسلحة لإيران وعلى قدرة إيران على بيع الأسلحة للعالم. ما تقوم به إيران والإحصائيات اللي ذكرتها من شوي يدل على أنه بالرغم من الحظر إلا أن إيران تسعى لتقديم الأسلحة للمنظمات الإرهابية، وهذا بوجود الحظر. فماذا سيحدث لو يرفع الحظر عن إيران؟ حتكون الإيران أكثر شراسة وأكثر عدوانية، والمملكة العربية السعودية حريصة وملتزمة بأمن المواطنين والمقيمين فيها وبحماية منشآتها، وستبذل كل ما في جهدها بتوجيهات من سيدي خادم الحرمين الشريفين وسيدي سمو العهد الأمين حفظهم الله لضمان ذلك. ولكن على المجتمع الدولي مسؤولية، وعلى مجلس الأمن مسؤولية كبيرة أن يقوموا بمسؤوليتهم وأن يردعوا إيران وأن يمنعوا إيران من تصدير الأسلحة لمنظمات إرهابية أو من دعم الإرهاب، سواء كان في أفغانستان أو في اليمن أو في الجزيرة العربية أو في سوريا أو في العراق أو في غيرها من مناطق العالم. فمرة ثانية براين، أرحب بكم في المملكة العربية السعودية، وأتطلع بعد ما يلقي كلمته معاليه أن نتلقى بعض الأسئلة من الأخوات والأخوان. شكرا.
Thank you for that introduction, Minister Al-Jabir. I've worked with Minister Al-Jabir previously on a number of issues during my tenure at the State Department, and that includes the successful Warsaw process, which brought more than 60 countries together in Warsaw to discuss promoting peace and security in the Middle East. I'm delighted that I was able to meet with you and also His Highness Prince Khalid bin Salman, and with His Highness Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan, and also with the Minister of Investment, Khalid Al-Fallah. I'm in Saudi Arabia on behalf of President Trump and Secretary Pompeo to underscore the importance of our close partnership. I'm also here to discuss diplomatic efforts to extend the UN arms embargo on the Islamic Republic of Iran. We need to ensure that Iran has a harder time spreading the deadly weapons that you see behind me. The weapons that we see here today, and which Minister Al-Jubeir discussed, are all the evidence we need that the arms embargo on Iran must not be lifted. If the embargo expires, Iran will be able to purchase and sell these weapons, as well as many other kinds of weapons, without any restrictions at all. This includes battle tanks, large caliber artillery systems, combat aircraft, attack helicopters, military drones, warships, and certain missile systems. The arms embargo on Iran has been in place for 13 years. It has not stopped all Iranian arms transfers, but it has been an effective legal, diplomatic, and normative tool. The embargo constrains Iran's ability to move weapons freely to its proxies. Imagine the new security challenges Saudi Arabia and other countries in the region will face if the arms embargo expires. Iran will upgrade its legacy weapon systems. It will acquire new and sensitive technologies that it could either re-export to its proxies in the region or use to increase the range and lethality of its current stockpile of missiles and rockets. Iran would upgrade its maritime capabilities and pose an even greater threat to international shipping and freedom of navigation. No leader that I have talked to thinks this is a good idea, especially leaders from countries in the region who are on the front lines of Iranian aggression. Lifting the ban on Iran will only embolden the regime and drive greater instability in the region. This is not an outcome that the UN Security Council can accept. The Council's mandate is clear: to maintain international peace and security. Allowing the UN arms embargo to expire is a betrayal of this responsibility. Even worse, it would trigger an arms race in the one region of the world that needs it least. The United States will ensure that this never happens. Until Iran changes its behavior, stops providing lethal aid to its proxies in the gray zone, and stops attacks targeting its own neighbors in the region, the arms embargo must continue. And with the strong support of countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE and Bahrain, it will. If the world fails to act, it should expect greater instability and even more violence. Since 2016, nearly 400 missiles and rockets have been fired into Saudi Arabia from Yemen. This would not be possible without Iran transferring weapons to the Houthis, which it is continuing to do. Two recent interdictions of Iranian weapons took place off the coast of Yemen as recently as November and February. This is in violation of UN Security Council Resolutions 2231 and 2216. I can assure you, these will not be the last interdictions of Iranian weapons destined for Yemen. In fact, I was briefed today of another significant interdiction of deadly weapons destined for the Houthis to attack Saudi Arabia, a G20 country. As Saudi Arabia and others are working with the UN Special Envoy, Martin Griffiths, to find a political solution to the conflict in Yemen, Iran continues to pour advanced lethal weapons into the country. De-escalating violence in Yemen is challenging, but the kingdom's leaders are pursuing the right approach. The Saudis and the Yemeni government are working with the UN and the international community in pursuit of a negotiated end to the conflict. American leaders are actively supporting these efforts. Just look at what Saudi Arabia has done. It has supported the proposals of the UN Special Envoy concerning a permanent ceasefire. It has supported confidence building measures to open Sana's airport and essential main roads. It has supported civil servant salaries. And it has resumed political consensus building to achieve a comprehensive political solution. Let's contrast this with Iran. Nothing could be more disruptive to peace efforts than what Iran is doing. Iran's leaders are rejecting diplomacy, fueling instability, and worsening the suffering of innocent Yemenis. Saudi Arabia and the United States provide aid and humanitarian relief to the Yemenis, while Iran provides the Houthis with missiles, UAVs, and other advanced deadly weapons. Saudi wants the war to end. Iran wants endless war. The contrast could not be starker. Here's a simple question for the international community to consider. If the embargo expires, do we think conflicts like Yemen will get better or worse? We should expect they will get much worse, not only in Yemen, but across the region where Iran arms its proxies. If Iran is so boldly defying Security Council resolutions now, do you think its behavior will improve with fewer restrictions? The United States will continue to stand with Saudi Arabia, as President Trump and Secretary Pompeo have made clear repeatedly. We have been close partners with Saudi Arabia for 70 years, and this will remain so well into the future. This includes our close security partnership. We have deployed multiple air defense systems to the kingdom and the Arabian Peninsula, twice extended the deployment of carrier strike groups, and deployed an additional 18,000 service members to the region. We also continue to partner with Saudi Arabia on a range of other issues, from energy security to economic prosperity, and we will continue to work together to build a more stable and secure Middle East. But if arms restrictions on Iran lapse and expire, a stable Middle East will be that much harder to achieve. The international community cannot allow this to happen. And that is why I stand here today with Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Gulf to call on the Security Council to extend the UN arms embargo on Iran. The Security Council must listen to countries in the region. They are unanimous in their view that the last thing this region needs is more Iranian deadly weapons. We must extend the embargo to give stability in the region a real chance. And thank you, and Minister Al-Jubeir and I look forward to taking a few questions.
Time for questions. نبدأ باستقبال أسئلتكم. Let's get started with an online question we have received first. Tommy Hilton from Al Arabiya English. She's asking, is there any upcoming movement towards the Iranian regime in the region?
Should we, any upcoming movement?
Yes.
What does that mean?
What is meant by movement? What is meant by movement? The Iranian regime, the Khomeini revolution took place in 1979. Since that time, Iran has been on a rampage. It has been sowing sectarian strife. It has been supporting terrorism. It has been interfering in the affairs of other countries. It has been supporting terrorism. It has been providing weapons and missiles to terrorist organizations like Hezbollah and like the Houthis. It has been working with drug cartels in South and Central America, and it has been working with criminal elements in order to engage in smuggling and money laundering. The Iranian regime has been responsible, as I mentioned, for more than 360 assassinations against civilian individuals all around the world. As recently as yesterday, a shipment was captured providing Iranian weapons, or trying to provide Iranian weapons to the Houthis. We have always argued that Iran needs to decide if it's a revolution or a nation state. If it's a revolution and it wants to restore an ancient empire and it wants to dominate the world, then that is not acceptable. If it's a nation state, it needs to act like one, and it needs to abide by the rules of international law and the norms of the international system, which call for respect for sovereignty, non-interference in the affairs of other countries, and respect for international law. Nation states do not provide terrorist groups with ballistic missiles that are then used indiscriminately against terrorists. The Iranians have to understand this. That's why Iran is under sanctions. That's why Iran is designated the world's chief sponsor of terrorism. And that's why the Iranians have to make a choice. If their behavior changes and they act like a normal state and they abide by the rules of the international system, the world can take a different look at Iran. But this is not what they've done, and this is not what they're doing. They seem to be on a rampage. They have wreaked death and destruction in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq. They're smuggling weapons and explosives into Bahrain. They tried to do it in the eastern province of Saudi Arabia. They provide weapons to the Houthis. And we have been always arguing that Iran needs to be stopped, that the world must take a firm stand against Iran. That's why we supported President Trump's aggressive policies of containing Iran and boycotting Iran and forcing Iran to change its behavior. That's why we're working closely with the international community, our allies, foremost the United States and our other allies, to try to deter Iran and try to contain Iran. It is really up to the Iranians to decide if it's better for them to provide a standard of living for their people, or if it's better for them to waste their resources on pushing death and destruction. There are two visions in the Middle East, as I said before, a vision of light and a vision of darkness. The vision of light seeks to improve the standard of people, empower youth, empower women. It seeks to improve economies, make government more transparent and more efficient. It seeks to provide opportunity for citizens and a better standard of living. This is what the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is doing through its Vision 2030, directed by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. And then there's the vision of darkness, which is Iran. It focuses on death and destruction, sectarianism, interfering in the affairs of other countries, denying their people the opportunity to improve their lives, denying their people services. I don't believe that since the JCPOA was signed, that Iran used the resources it received in order to build roads and schools and hospitals. Quite the contrary, those resources went to support death and destruction in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Thank you.
I agree with everything Minister Al-Jubeir just described. And I think the question was about Iranian movement in the region. Here's what we see. We see the Iranian model under a lot of duress in the region. It's a very bad model for the region, for all the reasons that Minister Al-Jubeir described. It is a vision of darkness that we see being increasingly rejected in places like Lebanon, Iraq, and in Iran itself, which in November had its worst protests in its 41-year history. And the regime responded to these peaceful protests by murdering 1,500 of its own people. They injured thousands, and they jailed anywhere between 8,000 and 10,000 people. So when you look at what the regime does to its own people, imagine what it does when it lays deep roots in other countries. And that's what the people of Lebanon have been discovering when they had massive protests against the Iranian model of corruption, lack of transparency, lack of accountability, sectarian violence, and a very dark future. When you see Vision 2030, and you see efforts by His Highness the Emir in UAE, these are leaders that are investing in their own people, and it's the opposite of what the Iranian regime is doing. You see Saudi and UAE and these other countries investing in their people and investing in a much brighter future. And this is the direction that we see the Middle East broadly heading. And we see very positive trend lines for countries that invest in their people, and those that rob their people, as the Iranian regime has done, are losing support for that kind of model because it's a failed model. And we very much support the economic reforms that are taking place here in the kingdom, the economic vision that His Highness the Crown Prince has put forward. But we see this all around the Middle East. And when you see Iran coming into your country, bad things follow. And none of them are good for the people of these countries.
Any other questions?
السلام عليكم، صالح الزيد من صحيفة الشرق الأوسط. سؤالي للسيد براين هوك، ما هو موقف الولايات المتحدة من التقرير الصادر عن الخارجية الأمريكية حول مكافحة الإرهاب، وما هي رؤيتكم للموقف الدولي من هذا التقرير؟ سؤالي الآخر، مع الإقرار الدولي أن الصواريخ التي استهدفت منشآت أرامكو ومطار أبها كانت إيرانية، وفي وقت يستمر فيه التهديد الحوثي للمدنيين في السعودية، هل هناك خطط أمريكية ضد الميليشيات أو ضد ميليشيات إيران في اليمن، خاصة مع تحولها إلى أن تكون ضمن خطط الرهان الإيرانية؟ شكرا.
I think it was for you.
I would need a translation.
Oh, okay. The question was the Iranians are the U.S. report on terrorism that came out, State Department, and what steps the U.S. would take, and then also the United Nations has determined that the missiles that were launched against Saudi Arabia were Iranian built and Iranian delivered, and that the Iranians provide this to militias in Yemen. And what is the U.S. policy with regards to dealing with those militias in Yemen? Did I cover it?
Tomorrow there will be a meeting of the UN Security Council, and it will be an opportunity for the UN Secretary General to provide a report of the experts, UN experts, who will present their findings on a number of issues that are of great concern to Saudi Arabia. We know that Saudi Arabia has been attacked from the north by Iran with Iranian missiles, as they did on the attack on Abqaiq. And we also know that Iran attacked Saudi Arabia from the south through the Houthis. And this is the kind of violations of the UN arms embargo, multiple UN arms embargoes, that ought to give pause to the UN Security Council. Because if this is what Iran is doing under the cover of darkness, imagine what they will do in broad daylight when restrictions are lifted on how they can organize, train, and equip their proxies with conventional weapons. And I described here in my remarks the kind of things that we're looking at. Attack fighter jets, attack helicopters, warships, submarines, missiles that have a range of 300 kilometers. I'll also mention, courtesy of the Iran nuclear deal, that more missile restrictions are scheduled to expire in 2023. So the Iran nuclear deal starts unraveling in 4 months, and it's going to continue to unravel until there is nothing left of the deal. I think a lot of people overlook the fact that the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action is temporary. It expires. And it set a very low bar for Iranian nuclear compliance. And we have also seen, which should be of enormous concern to the international community, and it's been underreported by the media, that Iran was called out by the IAEA Board of Governors and by the IAEA Director General for denying UN inspectors access to suspicious sites, nuclear sites. And they are also refusing to answer very basic questions that are presented by UN inspectors. And this is the kind of behavior that Iran is notorious for. They play cat and mouse with the IAEA, and that is something which, when we're talking about nuclear weapons, we have got to take that very seriously. So there was a vote in the Board of Governors, and the vote was 25-2. The text was led and negotiated by the UK, France, and Germany. It was voted down by Russia and China. And we think that both Russia and China, as nuclear powers, have a special responsibility to uphold the non-proliferation architecture that has been so essential for the safety and security of the world.
We have another online questions.
ممكن
Yeah, sure.
أود أن أضم صوتي لصوت معالي فيما يتعلق بإيران، وأعتقد أنه من المهم أن نذكر أن إيران لا تحترم سيادة الدول، وتعتقد أنه كل شخص بالمذهب الشيعي يجب أن يتبع إلى إيران. هذا كأنه إيطاليا تقول أنه كل واحد بالمذهب الكاثوليكي يجب أن يكون تحت سيطرة إيطاليا وليس تحت سيطرة دولهم، وهذا أمر مرفوض. وهذا المبدأ عدم احترام السيادة موجود في الدستور الإيراني، كما أن مبدأ تصدير الثورة موجود في الدستور الإيراني. وكما ذكر معالي فيما يتعلق بعدم احترام إيران للاتفاقيات اللي وقعتها، بالرغم أننا متأكدين أن الاتفاق النووي اتفاق ضعيف وكان مفترض أن يكون أقوى بكثير، وبالرغم من ذلك إيران لن تتجاوب معه. استمرت في تكثيف التخصيب، واستمرت في منع المحققين الدوليين المفتشين الدوليين التابعين لمنظمة الطاقة الذرية أن يفتشوا أماكن في إيران. إذا كان إيران تقوم بمثل هذه الأعمال وهي تخضع لعقوبات وتخضع لحظر من قبل المجتمع الدولي، ماذا سنتوقع أن تقوم به إيران إذا رفع هذا الحظر؟ الأمور حتتحول من سيء إلى أسوأ، وإيران حتصبح دولة خطيرة جدا وتهدد أمن واستقرار ليس بس منطقة الشرق الأوسط بس العالم بأجمعه.
We have a question from Steve from Wall Street Journal. For Mr. Hook, have you seen any evidence during your visit to Saudi Arabia to suggest that last week's attack on Riyadh came directly from Yemen?
We have no reason to doubt that it came from Yemen. And that's probably a question I would like to ask Minister Al-Jubeir. Where else is it coming from? I mean, this is, to some extent, I think people overcomplicate this stuff. If there are weapons moving through the strait and off the coast of Oman, they're coming from Iran. They're not coming from anywhere else. And this doesn't require enormous detective work. The Iranian regime has been arming the Houthis to fight at a level that beyond which makes any sense at all. And it has prolonged the war, it has intensified the war, and it has, Iran is complicit, extraordinarily complicit in the humanitarian catastrophe that is Yemen. And I have been disappointed in how the media have failed to hold Iran accountable for its role in making Yemen the tragedy that it is. And we have seen a lot of efforts put forward by the United States, by Saudi, by Martin Griffiths, the international community, to try to wind this down. And Iran would like to see this go on and on. And for as long as they're allowed to get away with it, they're going to keep doing it. And that's why the UN Security Council has an essential role to play. We're very hopeful about tomorrow's meeting of the UN Security Council. We believe that it will present additional evidence, as if we needed more, on why the arms embargo must be extended. Iran has not earned the trust to have the arms embargo lifted.
Yeah, I think the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been very transparent in terms of any information gathered with regards to missiles, where they came from and who provided them. And what you see behind us here is one of the tributes to this. And I'm confident that our colleagues in the Ministry of Defense will continue to be transparent and will continue to show the world all the evidence that we have. We have had inspectors or experts come from a number of countries after the attack against Abqaiq and Kharis, and their conclusion was very undeniable that these missiles came from the north. These missiles are Iranian missiles, and they were operated by the Iranians. So that's not just Saudi Arabia saying it, it's international experts saying it. With regards to the situation in Yemen, I want to support what my friend Brian said about the humanitarian situation in Sana'a, in Yemen as a whole. Saudi Arabia has provided more than $14 billion in humanitarian assistance to Yemen, while Iran provides them with ballistic missiles. Saudi Arabia has a development program in Yemen that is doing projects as we speak. The Iranians are providing booby traps and landmines to blow up young men and women in Yemen. Saudi Arabia has worked with and continues to work very closely with UN envoy Martin Griffiths on his formulations and his proposals for a roadmap towards peace. We have supported that. We work with all Yemeni parties in order to encourage them to move towards a settlement that will move Yemen away from war and destruction and towards peace and reconstruction. The Iranians are doing the opposite. I don't recall, I haven't lived that long, but I haven't read anything that was written over the past 2,000 years that showed that Iran laid one brick to build a hospital or a school in Yemen. All they've been doing is providing these items. in order to enhance death and destruction in Yemen. So we call and we work with our Yemeni brethren to try to extract Yemen from this tragic situation, and we will continue to expend every effort in order to be able to save Yemen from continued violence.
Questions?
Thank you, Marwa Rashad from Reuters. My question to Your Excellency is what has Saudi Arabia told Russia and China to do in terms of Iran arms embargo? And if they veto the decision, like what they have recently signaled they will do, what would that mean with the ties, with Saudi Arabia?
We are consulting with all the countries on the Security Council in terms of the issue of the importance of continuing the arms embargo against Iran. We point out the dangers that would ensue should the arms embargo not be extended, and those discussions are ongoing. And beyond that, I really would not like to speculate.
Questions?
سيد براين هانس فيان from عربية channel. راح أسأل سؤال من شقين. السؤال الأول could you use the yes
Yep.
هانس فيان من قناتي العربية والحدث. السؤال الأول: لماذا قامت الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية بسحب بطاريتي باتريوت من السعودية؟ وهل من الممكن أن تتخلى الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية بالمشاركة أو المشاركة في حماية السعودية ودول المنطقة؟ شكرا.
I think people have been guilty of over-interpreting that decision. We reposition our defense assets around the region as part of routine global force management. And we maintain robust in-theater air defense capabilities. We routinely circulate troops and assets to address emerging threats and to maintain readiness. DoD has very strong capabilities here in the region. We have air defense, and that exists to address any Iran-related contingencies as needed. And we also maintain readiness to augment these capabilities on very short notice. DoD is going to continue to work with Saudi armed forces to strengthen regional air defense capabilities. This is a long-term multilateral effort. From my experience here, I mentioned this earlier in my remarks, we've flown an additional 18,000 troops to this region. We've moved carriers in and out. We have moved air defenses in and out. We have helped to recruit other nations to enhance Saudi's air defense capabilities. And all of that work is going to continue. The mission does not change. The mission stays the same. And I don't think people should overinterpret when the United States routinely circulates troops and assets around the region. There has been no announcement about the change in our mission set. The mission set is the same. Saudi Arabia is a very close security partner of the United States. We share many of the same threats, and we share a very similar threat assessment. The Iranian regime will never be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon, period. We very much believe that Iran has a problem being at peace with its neighbors. The United States and Saudi Arabia oppose Iran's ballistic missile testing and its missile proliferation, which takes the lives of Saudis, and it also threatens the lives of Americans who are here in Saudi Arabia. The Houthis have been very indiscriminate about their attacks throughout the kingdom. We have many Americans here, and the attack on the airport in Riyadh, which was conducted with a missile of one of these size, that could have hit any airplane coming from anywhere around the world. And we need to do everything we can to deter this kind of behavior. The Council has a responsibility, and its responsibility is to not let a 13-year arms embargo expire on the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. This would be malpractice.
Sam Kelly from CNN. Iran just issued 36 arrest warrants for President Trump and others over the killing of Soleimani and asked Interpol for red notices to be sent out on them. What do you think?
Well, this is another political stunt by the Iranian regime. It doesn't surprise us. It's the kind of propaganda that I think we're certainly used to. Interpol, our assessment is that Interpol does not intervene and issue red notices that are based on political nature. And this is a political nature. This has nothing to do with national security, international peace, or promoting stability. And so we see it for what it is. It's a propaganda stunt that no one takes seriously and makes the Iranians look foolish.
If I may add, I think this is very laughable, and it should be on the Colbert Show.
السلام عليكم. الإشراف from CCTV China Central Television. وسؤالي إلى معالي الوزير، هل هناك تفاصيل جديدة بشأن الاجتماع بين المجلس الانتقالي الجنوبي والحكومة الشرعية اليمنية في رياض؟ وشكرا.
المملكة العربية السعودية تعمل عن قرب في توحيد صف المكونات اليمنية، وبالذات بين المجلس الانتقالي وبين الحكومة الشرعية. والمملكة العربية السعودية بتوجيهات من خادم الحرمين الشريفين وسمو ولي عهد اليمن حفظهم الله، وبعمل مباشر من قبل سمو نائب وزير الدفاع، تعمل بشكل مستمر لتقريب الأوضاع بين الأطراف. كما تعلم تم توقيع اتفاق الرياض، والآن نعمل مع جميع الأطراف لمحاولة تنفيذ وتطبيق هذا الاتفاق، والآن نأمل خير إن شاء الله.
السلام عليكم. سؤالي من شقين. السؤال الأول مع الوزير،
ممكن بس
السؤال الأول، النظام الإيراني في أكثر من مناسبة يتساءل لماذا يتم حظر تسليح إيران فضلا عن استمرار هذا الحظر. في الشق الآخر، هل نتوقع عقوبات إضافية على النظام الإيراني ليس فقط حظر تسليح؟ شكرا.
Could you repeat your first question?
النظام الإيراني، أولا أنا حمد المحمود من سكاي نيوز عربية. النظام الإيراني في أكثر من مناسبة يتساءل بأنه لماذا يتم حظر تسليح هذا النظام الإيراني فضلا عن استمرار هذا الحظر. الشق الآخر أيضا أعيد مرة أخرى بأنه نحن نتساءل أيضا هل سنتوقع عقوبات إضافية على النظام الإيراني فضلا عن استمرار حظر الأسلحة. شكرا.
I think when you look at Iran's behavior over the last 41 years, it's no surprise that they've been on under an arms embargo. The IAEA referred Iran's nuclear program to the Security Council in 2005. That led to a multilateral sanctions architecture imposed on Iran. In the process of that, starting in 2007 under Resolution 1747, Iran was placed on an arms embargo that would prohibit Iran from moving conventional weapons beyond Iran. And then in 2010, the Security Council enlarged the arms embargo to include, it prohibited member states from selling conventional weapons to Iran, and that was in place, and it's been in place ever since. That is scheduled to expire in 4 months. The Iranian regime exploited the Iran nuclear deal and used it as cover to run an expansionist and sectarian foreign policy. I remember in 2014 that Iran claimed that it was in possession of 4 capitals. President Trump and Secretary Pompeo over the last 3 years have challenged that claim because we have, Iran today is in a state of financial collapse. And so are some of its partners, like Hezbollah. And so we have been very effective at denying Iran the revenue that it would otherwise spend on weapons production and weapons proliferation. And this pressure campaign that we've had has been very effective. And we have also exposed the Iranian model for what it is. And I think that's why we're seeing more and more people around the Middle East reject the Iranian model. And that's going to continue. It's being rejected by the Iranian people. In November, you had protests in all 31 of Iran's provinces. And you saw people tearing down images of Iranian leadership and demanding a more representative government. And if there is one thing that the Trump administration has been clear on, is that we believe the Iranian people deserve a more representative government. And the Iranian people will decide the future of Iran. I very much hope that someday in Washington, D.C. on Massachusetts Avenue, we can return the keys of the Iranian embassy to the Iranian people. And if you look at the 100-year history of Iran, it's clear that the Iranian people have made various efforts to achieve a representative government. They've had sort of good periods and bad periods. The last 41 years will be remembered as the dark ages for the Iranian people. And I think they very much would like to see the kind of policies of governments in the Gulf where they invest in their people and they invest in their future.
Last question from Noor Nagali, Arab News. How comparable are the two countries' visions of the Iranian regime, and how can this danger be ended without war?
I think our policies are virtually identical. We both see Iran as a grave danger to not only regional stability, but international stability. We believe that Iran is the chief sponsor of terrorism. We believe that the international community has to be more firm in dealing with the Iranians and with their proxies. For example, Hezbollah, we don't believe that there is such a thing as a political wing and a military wing of Hezbollah. It's a terrorist organization. It's not a bird. And if it's a bird, the bird has 2 wings, but 1 head, and the head is terrorist. So the laxness with which countries have dealt with a group like Hezbollah or a group like the Houthis encourages them to do more damage and more harm. We believe that the international community must put firm pressure on the Iranians to abide by international laws and to cease support for terrorism and dealing with criminal organizations and drug cartels and stop the killing of innocent people. And I believe that our two countries are working very closely in order to mobilize the greatest number of friends and like-minded countries in order to ensure that Iran does not, that we can reduce the Iranian threat to the international community. We both wish for nothing more than Iran to be a normal country that lives in the international community the way other countries do, respects international law, respects sovereignty, non-interference in the affairs of other countries, and that it gets out of the ballistic missile and terrorism programs that it's on. But unfortunately, we haven't seen this. What we have seen is with every passing year, the Iranian regime becomes more ideological, it becomes more aggressive, and it enhances its interference in the affairs of other countries, and it contributes therefore to the death and destruction of innocent people, not just in the Gulf, in Europe, in South America, in Asia. This behavior is not acceptable, and that's why we believe strongly in working together in order to deter Iran and push back against Iran.
Agree with everything Minister Al-Jubair said there. I would also add that when I was in the UN Security Council in 2007, I was the lead negotiator for Resolution 1737. And that's when we had the arms embargo first put into place. And I'm very proud of the fact that it was a unanimous vote in the council. The P5 were unanimous, and so were the 10 elected members of the council. And you also had, when the arms embargo was enhanced in 2010, you also had the P5 unanimous. I think it's important on something like the Middle East, where the 5 permanent members of the Security Council we are invested in this region being more peaceful and more stable. And we have a shared interest in that. We also have a shared interest in Iran never acquiring a nuclear weapon. And I think that we all would like to see Iran at peace with its neighbors, instead of always in the business of deniable attacks through its proxies. And I'm very hopeful that we will be able to work as the 5 permanent members of the council to reach an agreement so that we can help this region, which does not need any more weapons. We have more than enough weapons. This is a fraction of the kind of deadly arms that have made their way not only here in Saudi Arabia, but around the Middle East. So this is a good time for the council to do the right and necessary thing. And I'm still going to be very hopeful and optimistic about our diplomacy. I have yet to hear anyone argue on national security grounds that it's a good idea for the arms embargo to expire.
Thank you, Excellencies. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Shukran.
Thank you.